Hi guys, Hack Age Academy here. In today's session, I'll be doing a step-by-step approach on how to carry out penetration testing. So we'll be reviewing the process of professional security testing. We'll also be performing validation of vulnerabilities. So let's get started. So for us to do this, we are basically going to open a Kali terminal on open a terminal on your Kali machine. So here we have one here. Okay. So the first thing we are going to do is we are going to target two different machines, and each of them they have IP addresses ending with 192. They have IP addresses ending with .100, and the other one is ending with .252. So these are the two machines that we want to target on this subnet. So the first thing we need to do is that we want to scan the whole subnet. All right, as a first approach in penetration testing, you have to scan. Now, when you perform a scan, it's going to provide you with the first step of scanning methodology, basically to discover live systems that are connected on this particular network. So we're going to use a tool called nmap. So let's go ahead. So I'm going to have the command nmap dash small s capital P, and then I'm going to provide the subnet that I'm going to scan, which is 192.168.177.0/24. So I'm going to scan this whole subnet. So for those of you that are new into security, what does that mean? Basically, this command is basically a ping scan on all the systems on this very subnet here. Okay, so what this means, the S here means it's actually duplicated in newer versions of nmap, so you can actually replace it with SN, right? So you can actually replace it with small SN, which tells the nmap to perform a ping scan, right? Basically to find out which hosts are up without scanning port, all right? And then what the system is going to do is that this scan will identify all the targets that are in all the targets on the entire class C subnet with the IP address, from 0 to 255. All right. So let's hit and then wait for the scan results to be out. So it's actually a very quick way to finding out the live host on a local network. All right. So it's going to take just a couple of seconds, and you could see that the result is out. So you could see that here we have different targets on this subnet. We have one ending with IP address .100, another one with .101, sorry, .100, 125, 245, 252, 114. So you could altogether see that we have up to 6 host machines that are up and are live on this network. So you can see that based on this has provided us with the first step of scanning methodology, which is basically scanning to find out or to discover live systems that are on that network. So now that we have performed the scan to find out live systems that are connected on this network. Next, we want to scan these target machines. Now, remember, in this exercise, I'm focusing on 2 target machines, 100, and then the other one with 192.168.177.250, 252. So these are the 2 target machines that I'm going to focus on in this exercise. You can decide to choose any of them, but it's basically up to you, right? So the next step, as a pen tester, after performing a scan to find out the live systems that are connected on these class C subnet, the next thing is we want to perform a TCP synchronization scan, which is like a status scan on this particular host, .100 and .252. All right. So in your target machine, in your terminal, write a command. We're still going to use nmap. So have my nmap dash. So here I'm going to have a small s and capital S. So what is small s and capital S? Small s and capital S means it's actually a TCP synchronization scan. So what it's going to do is that it's going to send synchronization packet and then watches for response. So it's actually a stealthier way of carrying out a scan than a full TCP connection. All right. So I'm going to provide my target now, which is 192.168.177.100. So remember, this is the first target machine that we want to carry out the target on, and then we're going to separate it. So instead of typing the whole this, I can use just the remaining digits of the IP address, which is 252. But the system is definitely going to identify that. All right. So when you perform a scan, when you use this TCP synchronization scan, you can actually scan to see maybe the open ports that are open on these selected target. So you're actually carrying out reconnaissance on these very two machines. All right. So I'm going to hit enter and then give it some time to see the output of these command. All right. So while we're waiting, once the scan is complete, you could see that it will give you more detailed information, of which we are going to see shortly in the next couple of minutes. Right. So the output of this, because you want to perform a TCP scan, you want to perform a TCP synchronization scan, is going to give you more details information about this very target. So as you can see here, we could see that for this very system here, these are the port numbers that are open on this very target machine. So you could see all the port numbers that are open for this particular target machine. And then if you check this here, this very one that ends with .100, you could also see the port numbers that are open on this very system. All right. So this is basically the second phase or the second step in carrying out penetration testing. All right. So we want to look at the third stage of penetration testing, which is scanning to identify the version, right? So we want to find out the version of these systems. So you could see here, all we could see is the port number and then the state of those ports, which are all open in this case, and then the services that are running on this port. So you could see each of those ports have respective services that are running on them. Okay, but we want to also scan to identify the version of these machine. So for us to do that, we are going to use nmap again. So in the terminal, we have nmap space. So dash small s capital V. So now this very command here, dash s small s capital V, is basically to enable the version detection, which is going to probe all open ports to determine the software name and their respective version, right? So we're going here to specify the target. Remember, we're using two machines, so 192.168.177.100, and then the other machine that ends with .252. So hit enter, and then we wait. So while we wait for the scan to complete, you can start to identify interesting information about your discovered target. So in this case, both of these boxes are Windows, right? So all the target machines that we're dealing with here, they are Windows. So the next thing you want to look at is the potential attack surface on both of the targets, right? So we can start to think about what are we going to attack first, right? So let's wait for the scan results to be out, and then from there we can proceed to see all those detailed information and see what we can take advantage of as a pen tester. All right. So now let's assume that you're working or you're contracted by a company, right? So you want to find out detailed information about the target you are going to work on, especially if the test you are provided with, or if the target you are provided, or the kind of penetration testing you are provided to is actually a black box. Now remember that in black box, you are not provided with any information about the target of evaluation. It is your responsibility as a pen tester to deploy all these keys, to deploy all these penetration testing steps to find out detailed information about the target. Now you could see that the result is out here now. Okay, so from the result of the scan, we can now see that we have an old version of Internet Explorer. Okay, so we can have an old version of, you could see the old version of Internet Explorer, like Microsoft SQL 2000. Okay, um, so you can see that both of these are showing us that we have significant risk to our client's network from this machine. Okay, so you could think of this as actually a vulnerability, right? You could think of this as a vulnerability in this case, because we're in 2025. I can't be running this old version of SQL on the system. Okay, you could also see that the target machine version is actually identified as Windows, which is the operating system in this case. So you can go ahead to perform an aggressive scan. Okay, you can perform aggressive scan as the next step, but it's not necessary in this case. So now that we've identified that this is actually a vulnerability on the system, because actually an old version of Microsoft SQL server, we are now going to see how we can deploy or move on to another methodology. Okay, so we could also check for vulnerabilities using a map scripting engine script. Um, so you can cover that. I'm going to cover that in one of my videos shortly. Okay, so the next thing is, now that we've identified the version that this target are actually Windows. So this one that ends with .100 is a Windows-based system. The one that ends with .255, 252 is also a Windows system. And we have seen different kinds of ports that are open. We know the importance of having port 80, which means it's actually running a HTTP. And we could see that FTP is also open, which means the system can likely be vulnerable to FTPD attack, among others. But before I do that, go into all of these details, I'm going to start a Metasploit. Now, Metasploit is one of the frameworks that is very, very powerful. Okay, so for us to start or launch a Metasploitable framework console, in your command line, so I'm going to clear all this screen so that we could have enough space. So I'm going to start my Metasploitable um, framework or console as the next stage now. So what I'm going to do is type in your command ms console and then hit enter. All right. So this is the main command line interface for using Metasploit. And we know that Metasploit is a very powerful penetration testing platform where you can run exploit, you can find payload, you can find auxiliaries, you can find modules into, modules that are related for a particular target. All right. So you can see that our Metasploitable framework is now on and running. So once this is now fully loaded, we want to search for different vulnerabilities. Okay, so you could search for, let's say, exploit, for instance. So if you search for exploit, you know, okay, so I think this is the building. So I'm going to restart that again. I'm going to restart that again. Okay, so our Metasploitable framework is starting. Um, starting. Okay, Metasploitable framework is starting. So the next thing is that we want to starting with exploitable framework. Okay, so I'm going to have a search and then MS08. I want to search for a particular vulnerability 67. Let's search for this to see module database cache not built properly using slow search. Okay, let's just give it some time to say. Okay. Okay, so now you can see that this is actually up now. Yep. So if you look at this very well, this has shown us that we have there's an exploit here for Windows operating system, right? So once the search returns, take a look at the information, particularly the rank. Okay, so you could see that the rank is actually great. Okay, and we like to see that as often as possible, or we are not sure our exploit is going to work. So it's either the rank is great or excellent, the exploit may not likely going to work. Okay, so now what we're going to do is that in this console now, we want to use this particular exploit we have identified here. So what we're going to do is that in the console, so we have use exploit. You can actually copy this exploit and paste. You can just copy it and paste, or you can manually type it. So Windows, and it's actually an SMB exploit, and then this is the name of the exploit that we want to use in this particular scenario. So once you're done with that, we're going to hit this. All right, so this should place you in the exploit, and once you are in the exploit, you can now type the information that are related to this particular exploit. So if we type info, we want to find out information that are related to this particular exploit. So here you could see different kinds of information. You could see the remote port number, yeah, browser is required, remote host. You could see different kinds of information that are related to this exploit. Now, it is always a good idea as a pen tester to read about the exploit and even test them in a test lab before ever developing them as a professional penetration tester. The next thing is, as you see from the information on this screen here, it is vulnerable in the parser of the server service that is being exploited, right? So it also can bypass NX, which is the protection major mechanism that does not allow execution on the stack, right? So the next thing, once we have reviewed all of these details information here, which is the NX that I'm talking about here. So once you have reviewed all of these information, the next thing is in the command line, let's type our show options. Okay, so this show options, we review the options that are available for the exploit, and in this case we are only missing one required item. Okay, so when you look at these this everything is set, the remote port is set, our target is set to automatic, which we don't necessarily have to do anything, but then something is missing, the remote host is missing. So we want to specify the remote host in this context, right? So now remember that we are dealing with two machines here, the one that ends with 100 and the other one that ends with the 254. All right, so let's set remote host. So I'm typing set remote host, remote hosts. All right, so I'm going to specify the let me use one first, 192.168.177.252, which is one of the systems that I'm going to that we have scanned and identified. I'll hit enter. So let's show options or show some of the payload, right? We've already identified an exploit, which we have already set as the metasploitable framework to use. So the next thing is we want to show some of the payload. So in your command line, you want to find out payloads that are available for this particular exploit. So let me type show payloads and then hit enter. Okay, so let's wait. So there are lots of payloads that are here. Okay, this will list out, you could see all the available payload for the exploit, okay, that we have used. Different kinds of payload. There are hundreds of thousands of payload in this case. So now, but we want to use a particular payload, right, which is called the interpreter bind TCP, which sets the payload. So it's actually a code that runs after exploits succeed. So the metapreter bind TCP is actually a payload that gives a metapreter share, and then it uses bind TCP, which means that the target listens for a connection from the attacker, right? So if you search for that, you can also say that payload. So you can search for, you can go ahead and search for maybe search search bind bind TCP. Just want to show you. Okay, it's going to take some time for that to come up. So it's going through the search process to find out the interpreter bind TCP, which is basically the payload that we want to use for this particular exploit in this exercise, right? So it's going to take some time. Okay, so once you start, you can go through it, and then you could see that this is the bind TCP, metapreter bind TCP that we want to use. So now you can come back to your share and then type set payload, and then this is a Windows payload that we want to use, and then it's actually a metapreter payload, and then we want to use the bind and then TCP, right? So now we have basically set the payload for these exploits now. So this will give metapreter a share, and it will use the bind TCP, right? So it will help the target to listen for a connection from the attacker machine. And once this is done, we can go ahead to, before we attempt the exploit, we want to show the targets that are available. So you can type show targets, right? So here you can see all the available targets for this. You can see there are a lot of targets for this exploit, and this is because of the different nuance of the stack with different service paths. So once you are ready, you can now type exploit. So let's try to exploit this to see if this is going to work. Right, perfect. So you can see that we're able to, establish a metapreter session is open and the exploit is successful, right? So we always say that exploitation is not 100%, but this particular payload, this particular exploit that we use actually got us clear. So now that we have the metapreter session open, as a pen tester, you can begin to, carry out different kinds of assessment. You can begin to carry out different kinds of, tasks to find out details about the exploited session that we have seen, right? So let's assume that we want to find out maybe some information about this particular machine or this particular target that we have exploited, right? So let's find out. Maybe just type let's say sys information, sysinfo. Okay, so from this system, it shows that the exploited system we have seen is actually Windows server, the architecture. This is a US work group logged on user for this. Okay, so if you check get, um, let's say we want to get the UID of the system. Okay, so you can see that the server username is this, authorization, Okay, you can see different kinds of information. If, for instance, you want to print the current working directory of the exploited system, you type pwd and hit enter. So this has printed the, the current working directory of the system. All right. So if you do ls to see the content of the exploited system, right? So you want to list files in current directories. So you could see that different files here about the exploited systems are found here. Okay, so as an ethical hacker or as a pen tester, you could see different kinds of things about this system that you've exploited. So let's assume that we want to now list maybe some of the running processes. If you type PS and then hit enter, so these are some of the current processes that are running on this system, and each of them, they have their specific this they have their specific user IDs in this system. Okay, we'll go through them among others. If you want to key a particular process, there are a lot of processes here, and these are their PIDs here. Okay, so if you want to key a particular process, you can actually execute a command to key that process that you want to do. Okay. Also, if you want to see other things like get privileges, it will list available privileges on this system, right? So let's type the command get privs, which is for the privileges. Let's try to see if there are available privileges. So these are a lot of privileges on this particular system that we can actually see. And then from there, you can migrate, you can get different kinds of process. You can take a screenshot, for instance, of this system. So let's try to see if we can take screenshot from this system to see. So the system, the screenshot has been taken already. So you could see that this is found in the root, and this is the name of the screenshot that we have taken from this system. If you want to see the details of the screenshot that have been taken, you can just minimize this and then go into our files, and then you could see that this screenshot was taken from the system that we have exploited. All right, so this is so interesting. Okay, this is really, really, really interesting. Okay, so let's go back to our terminal. Let's go back to our terminal. Go back to our terminal. Come on. Okay, so the terminal is already open here anyway, so that's fine. So you can also record, you can also, perform different kinds of key scan or maybe key logger, or can even dump keystrokes among others from this system. If you want to find out maybe the network commands of this system, we can type IP config, for instance, IP config, and then this shows us that this is actually the IP address of the target machine that we have exploited. You can go ahead to find out to display maybe the routing table of these target machines. So if I type route, for instance, and hit enter, you could see the routing table for these target machine, right? You could see all the details information about the routing table and the interfaces, for instance. Okay, if you want to detect if the target is a virtual machine, you can actually check our VM. So here we want to check if the target machine is actually a virtual machine, but here the system did not actually specify all of this. So on the summary, we are able to, perform a step-by-step approach in penetration testing, how you can perform a scan to identify the target machine that are running on the system, and then how you can, be able to carry out a scan on the target machine, among others. All right. All right. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I hope to see you in my next video.